So hi there, welcome to Chrysalis on the Couch. Today we are going to be talking about people, dead or alive, that we would like to sit and have a chat with. So quite an interesting subject. And I'm Kay, so I'm a Chrysalis tutor. And today I'm joined by Andria.
Hi there, I'm Andria. I'm a second year student coming to the end of my second year now. So yeah, it's really exciting.
And Sarah.
I finished about 5 or 6 years ago, and I've been sort of in private practice and also doing stuff with other agencies. And I really loved my course.
Great. And Kerrie.
Hi, I'm Kerrie. I'm also a second year student with Chrysalis, coming to the end of my second year and looking forward to starting the third year.
Okay, so please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. So let's kick off then. So people that you would like to meet, or maybe just one particular person you've got in mind that you would like to meet. So Andria, do you want to kick us off and give your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many people. I mean, I kind of struggled to keep the list really short, to be honest, because there's an awful lot of people I'd like to meet. I think family-wise, I'd really like to go back and meet grandparents, great-grandparents, because I come from, I hail from Wales and Cyprus. So they're two obviously very, very different worlds. And my great-grandparents from Cyprus actually had their, my grandmother adopted because there was an accident in the family and they couldn't take care of her. So I think for me to go back to that generation, kind of early 1900s, to sit down with, my family and see how life was back then, because I think they did struggle. It was quite a difficult environment in Cyprus at that time, and to have to give up their child for adoption. And, to go to another village. My grandmother ended up in another village where obviously then my father was raised, and that's where we go back to and consider home, really. I think must have been so difficult, to make that decision. But also I think if I could speak to my grandmother to see how she felt knowing she was adopted, because it was quite unheard of back then in Cyprus, and to see how she felt about being brought into another village at a young age, into a new family, and having to adapt to a different life. Even though she was very happy with her new family, they loved her and raised her so well. I think to go back and speak to her and, how her experiences affected her. I mean, I didn't get to know her very well before she passed because I was very young. But from what I hear, she was a very quiet, very humble lady. And I wonder whether that quietness comes from the childhood she had. So yeah, I mean, and then I'm sorry.
So I was going to say, do you know how old she was when she was adopted?
I think she was around 3 or 4. So it was, that age where she would have really known her mom and dad, her birth mom and dad, but also being very aware of being raised in a new family. So yeah, I mean, I'm always fascinated with that generation, and the same goes for my maternal side, who were from Wales. My grandmother left Wales at 17 to move to Liverpool during the war to help in the factories there. I think they were making something to do with bombs or ammunition. But then I remember her telling me about her parents, who were sort of, you know, in Anglesey, a beautiful farm, but again, struggled with that poverty. And then my great-grandfather's first wife died very young, so he remarried. And I think to be able to sit down around a table and speak to him and my great-grandmother and also my grandmother again, you know, they went through so much that I think we don't really kind of understand at this point nowadays. You know, we're very lucky, we're very blessed in what we have. And for, you know, my grandmother used to say to me, you know, they didn't have shoes or clothes, and they used to just have to, you know, kind of make do with the very smallest of luxuries. I don't think they even had that, did they? But and one memory of my grandmother, she used to say to me on the way to work in Wales, I don't know where she worked in Wales, or on the way to school when she was a young girl, she used to put, you know, the mildew from the grass on her face. And she said to rub it into her face. And she learnt that from her parents, because apparently it made the skin beautiful. So it's, you know, all of these things that are filtered down. And I remember my grandmother saying, but then I think, imagine being able to speak to my great-grandfather, you know, and what he went through.
You know, it's never even crossed my mind to go back and speak to family members. It just hasn't. I mean, yeah. I remember my mum talking about how they used to use soot for mascara, and how they used did they put up the back when they couldn't afford the stockings, because the stockings had lines up the back,
eyeliner down the back of the stockings.
Yeah. But you know, I mean, it sounds really interesting. It would be good to understand more what their life was like, I suppose. But I've just never even thought about it. Have you? Yeah. Have you other guys thought about anything like that?
I don't know. I feel really shallow that it never occurred to me to talk about family.
I'd like to meet my mother's side of the family, because we were all a little bit what's the word, spiritual, I suppose, and we, as a family, my mother's side are all very kind of good at like knowing who's on the phone before it rings, and like there are certain people that I just know when they're at my door. I just go to the door and open it, and they're still 6 foot away from the front door, kind of thing. And it's, my mum's the same, and my mum's brothers were the same, and my nan to some extent was the same. And I would like to know how far back that goes, whether there's, you know, that kind of goes back beyond my grandma, and so that would be really interesting.
That's actually really lovely, you know, to feel that you have that from, you know, in your family from sort of generations before. And it just proves, doesn't it, how really blood runs really deep in all of us. It's kind of not just now and, you know, our children or our parents and grandparents. It comes from generations, I think. And I think that's probably one thing that drives me to, if I could, obviously I can't, but to speak to them, just to see what kind of people they were, you know, what kind of relationships they had with each other, if they were kind, or if they were sensitive or angry, or, you know, there's so many questions. But yeah, I mean, in terms of family, but yeah, that's who I'd like to go back and talk to.
My grandmother was I didn't know, no, not my grandmother, my great-grandmother, who I never knew, was a medium, apparently. And, you know, maybe that sort of goes through. I know my mum was always scared of it, so won't have anything to do with that. But maybe it skips generations and picks up again.
Yeah, definitely.
That's stronger in the women.
Pardon, Sarah?
Do you think that's stronger in the women?
I don't know.
Because you're not talking about any of the men in your families having these sort of...
Is the men
activities, I think is the word I'm going with.
My mum's brothers definitely had the same kind of gift, I suppose, if you want to call it that. They were very clued up as to, you know, what was happening before it happened, and I you know, I wouldn't have to announce that I was there or going to call them or anything. They would always just sort of pick the phone up and know that it was me. So that was more than just the girls in the family, but it often is more female, isn't it?
I'm just wondering if that actually helped you as a teenager or was a hindrance, if they actually knew where you were at all times.
Yeah.
Would I like it if my dad would be able to do that? No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Well,
family aside,
yeah,
I don't. I think I don't know. I've never followed the genealogy of my lot, but I think Robin Williams fascinates me. I think he's I don't know. He's just quirky. He's funny. He's insightful. And then he took his own life. He just seemed like the happiest guy.
But that's often the case, isn't it, with actors, comedians? They do it because that gives them another person to be. It's their,
he did have MS or something, didn't he?
Yeah, bipolar.
Parkinson. Did he have Parkinson's or something?
I think he had bipolar disorder.
Did he? Oh, I know he had something, but he was so clever. And you think, I think meeting him when he was on a high would have been funny. But
to drink with, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. You could imagine if you went for a walk down the beach with him, you would actually both end up paddling in the water and being really daft. I like that. That's the sort of people I like. Somebody that would roll their trousers up and get in the water. That's important.
I mean, obviously, because I'm an animal lover, someone who came to mind that I would like to sit down and talk to is Noel Fitzpatrick, super vet, because I love his Irish accent. But he's such a lovely man, you know, and he's never married because he just puts the animals first the whole time. And apparently he's had loads of women that would like to marry him, and he's always said no. He might change his mind if he saw me.
Oh, there you go. I'm sure he would go like, this is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah. But I mean, he's so lovely to those animals and takes so much care. And the way he talks to them is the way I talk to them. You know, he talks to them and then he says, yes, Mummy will be back in a minute, you know, things like that, which is how I talk to animals. So I'd love to sit and have a conversation with him.
Takes it so personally, doesn't he? He takes everything so personally and takes on the burden personally. And you see him having to, you know, phone up the owners in the middle of the night sometimes and things like that because he's, you know, worried about them. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing watching him.
Yeah.
I see why you're interested. Yeah.
I think anybody who can love that much is worth knowing. You know, he's really, it all comes from love, doesn't it, from him, everything he does. So I think that's really admirable. And if he's chosen not to marry, to put the welfare of the animals first, then it says a lot about him, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
What about you, Kerrie? Have you got anyone in mind particularly?
There's a couple of people I'd be interested in meeting and speaking to. One of my favourite people in the universe is David Bowie, or was David Bowie. So I'd love to meet him. He was so unique. He just kept on regenerating, and he changed with every generation. He changed and remolded himself and became something different and changed his music. And I just think he was so adaptive. That, you know, it would be really interesting to speak to him and find out, you know, where that came from and where he got his ideas from, and that would be really amazing. I think he would be an interesting person to talk to.
I don't know much about his life. I mean, I did like some of his music, not all of it. you know, and obviously he was seen as a bit wacky, wasn't he? But don't know much about his life or anything.
Yeah, so I think it would be interesting to get to know a little bit more about that sort of side of things. But another person I'd quite like to talk to is I'd like to talk to Freud. I think
Oh God.
have a conversation about dreams and stuff with Freud and see where he's going with it all, you know. That would be an interesting, I think that would be a good dinner party person.
Would that be to like how much has changed and from his theories of how much it's changed and grown, and does he agree with the growth? Or
that would be really interesting, yeah, to see where he stands on it, or yeah, and the different theories that have, I say, kind of adapted and changed, and we found out more since. And but yeah, I just think it would be really interesting. I'd just like to get him to analyze my dreams as well. Just
yeah, I wonder what he's thinking when he looks down, and you know, whether he's saying, "Oh, yeah, that theory is a load of rubbish," or "that one's good," you know.
I wonder if he still agrees with his own theories, with, you know, or how he would change them.
yeah,
but of course, society's changed an awful lot, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas I think Carl Jung, you know, some of what he said is still really relevant today. He was more spiritually minded, I think. So I'd probably rather sit down with him than Freud, I think.
That's fair enough.
yeah, Freud would be quite heavy going. There's quite a lot of controversy, isn't there, about what's been overridden, been thought developed further to a point where it's not what the original was.
Yeah.
Yeah, bless him. Bless him.
What about you then, Sarah?
I think I'd like to sit down and have a chat with Princess Diana and the Queen. Because I think between the two of them, they've met everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a very interesting discussion to actually find out what the dynamic was.
Yeah, you might.
Because everybody guesses and surmises, and I think they're both really strong, powerful women. And everybody guesses and surmises that there was some sort of friction and stuff. But I actually think that they were a bit more grown up than that. So I think that they would be quite interesting people to sit down and chat to, to find out what that dynamic was like.
They were on my list as well, actually, of people. Oh, really? Yes, definitely. I think, how can they not be when there was, you know, there's been so much written about them, you know, they're always in the news, aren't they? And especially, I mean, the Queen for obvious reasons, but then, you know, Princess Diana, she's there all the time. So, you know, she lives on now in Harry and William, but there's something constantly about her life, about her death, about her character. And I think it would be really nice just to know who she really was and how she felt, because, you know, she was so young when she married into the royal family. I think she was, from what I gather, treated unfairly. But then, you know, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. There's a lot more to that than meets the eye and than made the media, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And again, with the Queen, like you say, you know, she's a very strong individual, but who is she really? You know, when we kind of take down the layers.
Yeah, who is, you know, not the persona she puts out for occasions, but actually the one that dunks the biscuits in the tea. That's the one I want to meet, that Queen, not any of the other multiple faceted options.
Yeah. I'd really like to know her relationship with her children and her grandchildren as well, to see whether she does have a softer side to her. And obviously she's had a lot in the media, as we know, sort of gone on between Harry and Meghan. I just like her take on things, really, to see how she felt about it all.
And how to empathise with how she balanced her public and her private persona, and what the differences are. I think that would be fascinating to know. She must be so torn into fragmented pieces. I mean, it must be really difficult to be her.
Yeah, I agree.
I wonder if she has friends. Like, does she have a friend round for a cup of tea or lunch? Or
because the lady in waiting is kind of there to do a job, not to just be your mate.
It's weird, isn't it? You know, it's like when you get into these sorts of things and you think about it in like depth, it's like she is a real person under all of that. You know, she's just another person. She's a mum, she's a nan, she's as you say, probably a friend. And that, you know, does she ever get a chance to just be that person?
Yeah, that's the person that I would like to meet. Like, you see all of the, you know, you see the Queen at Chelsea Flower Show, you see the Queen at this and that. That's not the one. I want the one that puts her wellies on, walks the dogs, and dunks the biscuits.
Yeah,
because I'm sure she does. I'm sure she's a biscuit dunker. I think there's people that are and people that aren't there, really?
Yeah.
You never really know, do you, people in the public eye? So even though we might think someone comes across as really nice, underneath they might not be, and the other way round. Yeah.
I mean, Princess Diana cannot have, I mean, she didn't have it easy. There must have been times when she had adverse reactions that she thought 2 seconds later, oh, could have dealt with that better. I mean, it can't have been plain sailing for her either. I mean, to put up with all of that and handle it really well at that young age. No, that didn't happen, did it? She was a real person. That wouldn't have happened.
Well, from what we've heard, she suffered with eating disorders, didn't she, and anxiety and all sorts. So, you know, to be able to speak to her and kind of gauge where all that came from, you know, whether that was from the marriage or whether she brought that with her, because she did have quite, I think, a stressful childhood, didn't she? Parents divorcing and other things that went on. So, you know, where did all that sort of those problems, unless they just came to light when she got married? I don't know. Would be
like a counselling session with her, wouldn't you? Do a timeline with her or something.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I would hate to be in the royal family, have that sort of role, because I don't like being told what to do, and I like my freedom. You know, I don't even want to be told that I've got to wear a uniform or anything at work. So I'd be like, oh, sorry, Queen, I'm putting on my boots and jeans to do this interview.
Yes. What do you mean I've got to wear a frock?
Yeah, definitely wouldn't suit me well.
Yeah. So it's interesting she was on your list as well, Andrea.
Definitely.
Those girls were on your list.
Yeah, I would also like, I think, to have a chat with Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge. Yeah, I'm very torn with her. I think she's, you know, absolutely beautiful to look at, and she plays the part. But then I'm wondering, underneath all of that as well, is she actually as nice a person as she comes across? You know, or was there another agenda there? I don't know, maybe I'm naughty, but I shouldn't really be thinking of that. But yeah, I'm just a little bit torn. You know how for example, Meghan, we got what we saw, didn't we? You know, she was this character, outspoken. We've never actually heard Catherine say very much from off script, and I think she would be so much. Maybe she's just not allowed to, is she? Saying that because she's, you know, future queen.
Next in line.
So, yeah, I would really love to have a genuine chat to her about just being a mom, or, you know, being a wife, not in the royal family, but you know what she's actually. She looks like she's a lovely person, but then, you know, you read some things again in the media and you think, yeah, is she, or I don't know.
Well, we've all got good and bad, so
Yeah.
she can't be that perfect, can she? That, you know, there's got to be times when she gets angry or frustrated about things, and we just don't get to see it, do we?
I think it's sad that they almost have to present themselves at all times rather than just be.
Mm.
I think that must be stressful.
Mm.
You know, and
Yeah, I'd like to talk to John Lennon.
Mm.
what about Yoko?
Well, she can be there if she wants, but I'd rather talk to John, because I think he was sort of wise, and sort of born at the wrong time in a way, and you know, I mean, just that song, Imagine, I think is the most brilliant song, and to sort of come up with those ideas at that time. And I'd just love to sit down and talk to him about his sort of views about how the world is now and the direction we're going in. And
it makes you wonder whether he foresaw something, you know, with that song, because I mean that song is perfect for now, isn't it? You know, I think we've just come out of a pandemic, but have we learned anything from it? Or we're going through major global climate crisis, but a lot of people are just, you know,
I just want to go back to what it was, not actually this is an opportunity to reset and go forwards. I think John Lennon was kind of ahead of his time with some of his thinking.
Yeah.
But I do also think that he was born of the hippie era, so that might be part of where his thinking was rooted.
Maybe, yeah.
So maybe he's a product of both times. Yeah.
I'd quite like to see to meet with Nelson Mandela. I think he'd be an amazing person to talk to. Been through something. I'd love to know how he got through the time that he was in prison, and you know what he thinks of, you know, the way things have changed and not changed in some ways, in some, you know, in some instances as well. It'd be interesting to speak to him, I think.
I don't know much about it apart from the very public-y bit. I've never read up on him particularly, but my parents always used to say there was a lot of violence done in his name, and I wonder how somebody so peaceful kind of balanced that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So Nelson Mandela, I think, is a very curious one, isn't he?
Yeah, I just think it'd be really interesting to hear kind of his struggles and what kept him going, you know.
He had some sort of faith going on, didn't he?
Yeah, definitely.
He had something. Gosh, he was pretty amazing, wasn't he? To be in prison for so long, and just he got through it. And even when he came out, he was, you know, you could see he was still such a peaceful, loving, kind person.
Everybody's frozen.
Yeah. So.
Oh, some freezing going on.
Yeah, we've got some freezing going on here, people. I'm just closing down everything that isn't necessary. Bear with. There you go.
I think anybody like that, you know, Gandhi, Buddha, would be fascinating to get their take on how life is and where they got their views from. You know, I think that would be.
Did anyone ever put Jesus in that list?
I did, and I put Nelson Mandela. So isn't it funny? We're all on the same page, but I put Jesus was my number one.
Right.
So yeah. Did you, Sarah?
I was just wondering, like you were talking about Gandhi and you're talking about Buddha and all these really interesting people, and I'm like, well, everybody talks about them as being fascinating. People don't really talk about Jesus being that interesting, and I'm like, he must have been.
Oh yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think they're all like sounds a bit weird, okay, but I believe they're higher beings that have come here to pass on wisdom, try and get points across to people. You know,
I agree.
And they would be fascinating anyone like that would be fascinating to talk to.
I put Mother Teresa on my list as well, just after Jesus, because I mean I'm Greek Orthodox, so my religion is quite important to me anyway. But me and my husband often have this discussion, if we could go back and speak to Jesus and have a conversation, what was it all really about? What happened? How did he feel? Because you read the Bible, you watch the movies, you read, you hear so much, but to actually know what he was there for, doing, I think it's fascinating. And the same for Mother Teresa. When you look at how she lived her life, it is just, it's amazing, I think, to be able to be in that position and help so many people.
With Jesus, it would be really interesting to see kind of what he thinks of what we as a species, so to speak, have become. And kind of taking the Bible as, if we take the Bible as writ, then if he was crucified for the sins of mankind, and then to come back and see what mankind has become, I think he'd be a bit disappointed.
I agree, Kerrie. I agree. Yeah, which is really sad, isn't it? And this is why, like I said to you about the pandemic, what have we learned? Have we learned anything? But there's still so much going on. But yeah, I agree that I think Jesus would be, disappointed.
I think as higher beings, they would know that, a lot of people are trying their best to progress, and there's others that are in a totally different place. So he wouldn't be cross. Might be a little bit disappointed and wishing we could get there a bit quicker. They can't get it. But wouldn't be angry about it. All right.
That's a lovely way to see it, though, Kay. So thanks for that, because it is sometimes you do kind of think, oh gosh, he'd be sad, he'd be disappointed. But then when you reminded me that actually he's a higher being, that this all-knowing, all-feeling, and we should know that. I should know that, because that's what I try and teach my children, that forgiveness, and we move on and we love each other. But and that's what he is, and that's what I guess lots of other figures in religious history or history would be.
I think we're kinder out of the pandemic. I think we're more empathetic. I think we're kinder, and I think we're more grateful for things. I don't think we take quite so much for granted, but I just dispute the need to go back to what it was, because if go back to what it was, it's just going to be the same and not improved.
We can't go back. And I mean, the thing is as well, we hear more about the negatives of everything, don't we? In this country especially, and that's why I don't watch the news or read newspapers. And there is a newspaper called Positive News, which tells you about all the good things that are happening in the world, which we never hear about. So
I say, don't get that. You don't get that on the Daily Mail stand before you get on an airplane, do you?
No, you can get it online. I don't know if they do an actual copy now, but you have to sign up for it. But it tells you about all the good things that people are doing, which is makes a change from all the negative news. Better
than the half-assed attempt at the end of the newsreel where they say someone's dog got pulled out of a river. Which seems a little bit not quite enough, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I like it when animals are rescued and stuff. And
it's just like the ending on a good note thing, and it's like, don't patronise me.
No, but it does sort of show that there are some good people in the world.
And we do need to highlight that, because otherwise we do forget the kindness and the empathy that we've been working on for the last 2 years. It does feel like 2 years to me. Anyone else?
What, the pandemic?
Yeah. It feels like it's been 2 years, not 18 months or whatever it is.
Yeah, feels like it's been a long 18 months.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people haven't been able to see their families and stuff in that time, and maybe for them, they just like to sit down with some family members they haven't seen for a while.
Tell you who I'd happily do an audio call with, not a meeting. I only need to hear his voice. That's Morgan Freeman.
Oh yeah.
He could read me bedtime stories, that man, or just the recipe list for Sunday lunch. I don't mind. I think he's lovely. He seems to pick good movies. He seems to be such a well thought through, and his voice just sounds like melted chocolate that you could dunk strawberries in.
He is fascinating, isn't he? You know, he never became an actor until his 50s.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I looked him up a few months ago. I don't know for what, but yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, so there's hope for everybody then. Over 50 to become a Hollywood actor. But no, seriously, yeah. He didn't get into acting until very late on. Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean,
That's why he comes across as so grounded.
I think so. I think he's been there, seen everything, hasn't he, and experienced so much that he just is so calm and collected.
Yeah, he doesn't get caught up in the whirlwind, does he? And he's like, yeah, that doesn't matter.
No.
I like him. I like him a lot.
I do too. I do as well. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we're going to have a very interesting dinner party, because you know we've got Morgan Freeman and Robin Williams talking to the Queen and Princess Di, and then we've got Noel, who's probably talking more to the animals, and then some
David Bowie, who's
members
got a nice album about the conflict, about all the efforts in the room. There you go.
There we go.
I'm sure it would be great fun, but we've got to stop now because we're running out of time. I'm sure there's lots of other people we could invite and have good conversations with.
A few more on the list if you need.
Yeah, we need to stop for now. So thank you for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed our little chat. As I said at the beginning, please like and subscribe to our channel, and also look out for the next Chrysalis on the Couch, which will be coming very soon. But for now, we need to say cheerio. So bye from all of us.
Bye.
See you again. Bye.
Bye.